digitaal hoor.
Ja, dit is een proefschrift voor hem ook, hè? Die nee, deze is ook nog over. Die doe ik even aan jou, want anders wordt het weg. Maar ik had 2 enveloppen bij me met proefschrift, hè? Ook even vergeten.
Heb je ook nog een pen voor mij, Franka?
Een pen?
beoordeling van het proefschrift en de stellingen van Rafael Capaz. The candidate is already connected. We have the full session via video connection. The defense of the thesis, and the thesis entitled Alternative Aviation Fuels in Brazil, Environmental Performance and Economic Feasibility. And the Board for Doctors of Delft University Technology invited a small committee to evaluate the thesis and to have a discussion with the candidate here in public, at least via streaming, visible for the public. I'd like to introduce the members of that committee. Professor Cavalet, Norwegian University of Science and Technology, Norway. Thank you very much for being present and joining us here today. Professor Da Silva Walter, University of Campinas, all the way from Brazil, joining us as well. Professor Weri, Delft University of Technology. Thank you for joining us. And Professor Junginger, Universiteit Utrecht, the Netherlands. Then the co-promoter, Dr. Posada Duque, Delft University of Technology, present. And Professor Ciabra, University of Campinas, also the promoter, like Professor Osseweyer, present here. My name is Peter Wier, I'm the Pro-Vice Director for Doctoral Affairs at this university and have the pleasure to chair this session. I'd like to start the opposition and invite Professor Cavalet to take the floor to start the opposition, please.
Yeah, thank you all for the introduction. So, Varde promovendos. I like very much your work. I think you have published 3 very good papers, and you have evaluated several biofuel options, and your work is very rich on the analysis of it. So you have done different analyses with uncertainty, sensitivities, and several impact characterization of different fuels and different approaches for SA. So it's a very nice work. Then I would like very much to discuss the assumptions and very specific points of this work, but I guess I would like to start with things that are not there. And you remember that maybe in the previous midterm evaluation we have discussed a little bit on these, and I would take the opportunity now to ask your perceptions on these issues that are not there. I will start then, for example, with the biogenic accounting for some of these conversion routes, and ask specifically how you do with residues, mostly for sugarcane residues and forest residues. How would you account for this, and why you didn't account for this in the first place, and how you do account for that? How important those would be for the assessment of these specific routes for the climate mostly.
Dear candidate, is the question clear to you?
Yes, the question, my name is Hector. The question, I think that it's clear for me.
Okay, then I give you the opportunity to defend yourself.
Hopefully the opponent, that's an interesting question. The biogenic carbon, considered in the climate change issues, it was not accounted. I mean, because if it's a biogenic carbon, I didn't sum this carbon in the emissions at the end, in the use of the fuel. Yeah, the first point. Then the biogenic carbon, I didn't account it in this way. In the second point, in consequential analysis that we carried out in chapter 2, I consider the consequential mainly related to the forest residues to keep or to avoid keeping these residues on the field. Then that's it. I don't know if I was clear.
Yeah, maybe I can expand a little bit. If we have residues, those will decompose slowly in the soil, do heterotrophic respiration. If you take it to produce biofuel, you are anticipating these emissions in time, and you do have a difference in the emissions that you would expect, even if the biogenic accounting, even if they are biogenic, they would make a difference for climate because of mostly, as you mentioned, this consequential analysis where you are relating the consequences of alternative scenarios. So the reference scenario is like leaving the residues in the field to decompose, but you are taking them and emitting them in the year one. So this does create a difference for climate.
Well, I didn't consider these I understood now, it's more clear for me, but I didn't consider this biogenic carbon.
Yeah.
In our analysis, we didn't consider it mainly because the Brazilian climate conditions. Yeah, when you compare, for example, in the Norway climate, there's a long and slow decreasing of this decomposition. In Brazil, according to the literature as I use it, this decomposition is so fast. Then, but I mean, in our analysis, we didn't consider this biogenic carbon because of it.
Yeah, I'm happy with your answer. Maybe I'll skip this one. So I'll make another question. I would like to challenge your statement one of your conclusion. I will say what is that about? Is when you say that the alcohol to jet fuel with sugarcane ethanol, first generation sugarcane ethanol, is the best option for short-term solution for aviation. And my question is, yeah, I can accept it, but how much it is linked with the results of your thesis? Because you have routes that have either lower costs or they have a higher mitigation potential, and I would expect that the best option for short term would be residues because they're already there and they are the lowest cost and lowest and highest mitigation. So why you're pointing to something that's counterintuitive to your results?
Well, mainly because the volume of the sustainable aviation fuels that you can produce. Of course, there are several very important and strategic concerns about the food competition. But this statement, that's my first proposition, was related to sugarcane, was related in the Brazilian context. Then, considering the volume that can be produced from sugarcane ethanol in comparison with the residues, and in comparison with the other oil-based feedstocks, oil-based pathways that were evaluated, it would be the best solution, the best pathway in the short term. Then the volume that you can produce. The food competition in a Brazilian context is very disputable, mainly considering the sugarcane ethanol. For example, I made some calculations previously on this defense. We need just 1.5 million hectares to supply the Brazilian demand, the eventual Brazilian demand of sustainable aviation fuels, if you use this area to crop sugarcane. Yeah. Then you have much more area to expand this. The second point is expertise. We know how to produce sugarcane and how to produce sugarcane in a sustainable way. In the other point, the alcohol to jet technology is not so mature as HEFA technology, but the steps of these technologies, it's not, we can expect that you'd be overcome as soon as possible. Yeah. And the results of it, you can see in the Corsia default indirect land use change related to sugarcane sustainable aviation fuels, for example, is a low value in comparison with the other. Then this statement, that is my first proposition. If you asked me to suggest for an investor what would be the best way, the best pathway to produce alternative jet fuel in Brazil, considering the volume, considering the environmental analysis, considering the expertise, the Brazilian expertise, I would suggest alcohol to jet from sugarcane ethanol first generation. I'm completely aware that's not fit with the great will to produce sustainable aviation fuels from residues, but you have to consider the volume. And in comparison with the other first generation pathways, the sugarcane ethanol is better.
I see. I'm happy with your answer. I would like also to ask quickly, if I may have the time, maybe I do, about your statement 3. I have that is that the wages of waste pathway could be a mirage, and in general it's a little bit similar as this one. When I read it, it's a little bit pessimistic on the potential for those, and I would like also to challenge you, because you mentioned most of the wastes that are already available. And when you talk about ATJ for third generation ethanol, you are talking about supplying more ethanol with additional sugarcane planting. But you're not considering in this case additional land or additional demand or other sectors that would make a little bit more residues available. I know that residues are, as they are a co-product of another system, they have their production capacity limited. But you could, I had the impression that that second generation pathways that you convert the logics into fuels are a little bit embedded in this discussion on statement 3 or 4, maybe 4.
3.
Yeah, 3. Thank you. And and then your tone was a little bit pessimistic. So I would like to hear more of you on these potentials and why they look so bad in this statement.
Yeah. Well, I'm not so pessimist, but I try to be, it's very common sense, I try to be realistic. I observe that when you're thinking about the potential of residues, the environmental analysis, it's very interesting. All of the low carbon policies, you can see behind of the methodological choices that it boosts, that they support the use of the residues. It's okay. It's okay for me, but I mean, in comparison with the first generation potential, according to the pathways that I evaluated here, the first generation potential could produce much more sustainable aviation fuels in terms of the volume, than the residues. This is the first point. And when you're thinking about try to start a consolidation, start a building a supply chain, the volume, in my opinion, is very important. The second point, according to the first analysis, to the prior analysis that was based on my thesis that I cite in the introduction, you can see that the use of lignocellulosic residues, in terms of the strategy, in terms of the technical and economic risk, commercial risks, are the best one. Yeah, but in a short term, we have some bottlenecks, technology bottlenecks to overcome, in my opinion, to provide the effective use of these residues. The third and maybe the most important point that inspired me to use this sentence. There are several residues that are in use. Then, according to the experiences that I had during my thesis, for example, let's get the steel of gases. 60% of the most Brazilian steel mills has already used steel of gases. And according to the engineer in the plant, he told me, Rafael, if you get this of gas that I use today, tomorrow, to produce sustainable aviation fuel, tomorrow I will buy natural gas. Then the idea, Professor, that I want to bring with this discussion, okay, let's go to residues, but you have to pay attention to some bottlenecks under technology, the effective potential, and the point here, the word here is the effectiveness of the potential. And there are residues that are in use, and indeed, and it's because I see it be more realistic, we can expect adverse effects if you get these residues supported by a nice policy, if you get these residues in use to produce sustainable aviation fuels. Then in this way, I'm not supporting first generation. I'm just a way to discuss more that's the word, the effectiveness of the use of residues.
Okay. Thank you, Varde Promovendus. I'm happy with your questions. I think these are the questions I had for now.
Thank you very much, Professor Cavaret. Then I'd like to continue and invite Professor Da Silva Walter to take the floor.
Thanks for Delft University of Technology and promoters and co-promoters for the invitation, this opportunity to be here. But Promovendus, I read your thesis, I liked it very much, and also I liked the 3 papers that you published. I have some general questions. The first one is related with the costs of avoided emissions. That I suppose that you conclude the figures that you have for Brazil are representative for some other countries, potential producing countries. This is the first part of my question. If you agree that these costs are representative for other countries. The second part is related with the high value that you reached, and what you believe it be possible to do in the future in order to reduce these costs. And relate with these high values, I would like to ask you to comment about your critical position, from my point of view, regarding the use of offsetting mechanisms by airline or airplane operators in short to mid-term.
Jorge, the opponent, thank you for your question. First of all, the first question, it's possible that the results be representative for other contexts, mainly considering the second generation pathways. I mean, the pathways based on residues. Because in the evaluation of the mitigation costs, you have to consider the environmental performance. And according to the CORSIA guidelines, the upstream environmental burden was not accounted. And the upstream has a big influence of the environmental performance in terms of the carbon footprint in the pathway. Then answer your first question, yes, it's possible, mainly related to the second generation pathways. In terms of the cost, your second question, in terms of the costs. In all of the studies that I see and the numbers that are reached, the conclusions are the same. Yeah, produce alternative jet fuels today is much more expensive. In some cases, much more expensive than produce it at Jet A. But I suppose that it happens when you, in the other times, in the other ages of our history, when you want to shift the energy supply. Yeah. I suppose that there are three points that I can cite here. try to decrease these costs. First point, the design of the plant. In two chapters, mainly in this chapter 3 that you cited, I compare with other studies, the results with the other studies, and you can see, for example, the study that I cited several times in my thesis from the Klein et al. In a context of an integrated plant, and he considered the integration with the first generation ethanol plant, it's possible to reduce these costs a lot because they use the power from the ethanol to produce hydrogen from water electrolysis, for example. Yeah. The design of the plant then is very important. The production of the hydrogen, that in terms of the economic and environmental too, it's a strategic feedstock. Then try to produce hydrogen internally. I observed some producers that they are getting a share of the light streams to make steam reform, and internally we try to be independent from the external supply of the hydrogen. Yeah. Then, and the costs of the feedstocks and the scale. Yeah. The scale is very important for alcohol-to-jet and Fischer-Tropsch. As I mentioned, as I pointed out in this sensitivity analysis, the feedstock is very important in HEFA. Then the importance of the residues could be strategy in this perspective, and increase the scale and change the design and thinking about the possibilities to produce hydrogen. This is the way that I can see to reduce the costs. In terms of the offsetting measures, yes, we conduct critics about it, because nowadays, according to the CORSIA guidelines, it's possible for the airline companies to achieve their targets to purchase offsetting carbon from the carbon market. There are, I think, 7 programs that are already certified by the CORSIA, and it's possible to buy this. I confirm it in my thesis. That's much more easy in the point of the airlines purchase these carbon credits than invest in a plant or and buy the sustainable aviation fuels, because the ton avoided from sustainable aviation fuels is much more expensive than the ton offset by carbon measures. The critics in this way is because we can observe in some recent studies that the effective offsetting, some studies has criticized, again this word, the effective of this mitigation. I see one study that, for example, more than 70% of the carbon credits that don't have additionality. Then, instead of to purchase carbon credits to provide reforestation in another country, okay, it's a good idea. But if you compare this situation with the situation to be supplied by sustainable aviation fuels, I think that the control of the effective mitigation is more clear. Then, just to wrap it up, my main critics here, Professor, is not only the effective of the offsetting. My main critic here is to consider in the same level the carbon mitigate from a supply chain of sustainable aviation fuels and the carbon mitigate from different products than the activity that emit the carbon. That's the idea. I don't know if I was clear.
Your microphone,
Professor,
please.
Your microphone.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Thanks for your answer. My second question is related with your results in conclusions regarding the production of biojet fuels from palm oil in Brazil. from my point of view, I think it's too optimistic to produce sustainable aviation fuels in North Brazil. I would like to ask you to develop a little bit on this comment.
Yes, I was waiting for this question. You know that palm oil, mainly from the colleagues from Europe, palm oil, the idea of the palm oil is completely strange when thinking about sustainability, and mainly when thinking about the sustainable biofuels from palm oil. Mainly because the bad experience that you had from palm oil from Malaysia and Indonesia. The main reason that I carried out several analyses for palm oil in my thesis is because the Brazilian has a potential. And you can understand as a potential as a Brazilian has expertise to produce palm oil and Brazil has land to produce palm oil. I see it several times during my thesis, the study that I suppose that you know about the agro-zoning of sustainable production of palm oil in Brazil. And according to this study, there are almost 7 to 30 million hectares available from the degraded lands to produce palm in Brazil. Then in this study, it's not necessary to make more deforestation in Amazon. Then you have land for it. You have an equivalent land that today is used to produce palm in the world. And I mean, according to this study, it's possible to use this land with modest technology level. It's not necessarily big technology level. This is the first point. The second point, according to the last 10 to 15 years, we observed that there are a clear trend to decrease the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest to produce palm oil. If you can get 2006 and 2010, the area of palm oil increased. Of course, Brazil, today we have just 0.2 million hectares. We are responsible by less than 1% of the palm oil produced in the world. But in this time, 2006 and 2010, the palm oil increased twice at expenses of the 4% of this area was from the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest. After the introduction of a Brazilian plan to produce sustainable palm oil, we can observe that between 2010 and 2014, the production increased almost in the same level, but not 4%, but just 0.8% of the palm was produced from the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest. What we can understand of it? The three big companies in Brazil, they see the advantage to produce a sustainable palm oil. Yeah, this is this is the main reasons that I be optimistic to suggest the production of the sustainable aviation fuels from palm oil in Brazil. But we have to consider, of course, the high risks that there are behind of it. 60% of the palm crops today in Brazil, 60% are less than 10 meters of the borders of the Amazon rainforests. Again, another point. In the north region, we have a poor infrastructure to in terms of the roads, for example, and thinking about fast increase of the palm oil in this region, okay, you have risks to provide to deforestation to provide this infrastructure. Then, this is 2 points, Professor. Yeah, we have the potential. There are several risks behind of it, but I'm not. I can't judge me if I'm optimistic or pessimistic in this way. I just want to point again, we have the potential. It's possible. I don't know if it's possible in this current government. I think it's a higher risk because of it, but it's possible.
Okay, thanks for your answer. I think that's okay for me. I'm satisfied with your answers.
Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
much.
Thank you very much, Professor Da Silva. Then I'd like to invite Professor Junginger to continue the opposition, please.
Thank you, Mynheer Director. Waarde promovendus. I read your thesis with great joy. I think it is a very interesting contribution to the body of scientific knowledge. And I think especially chapter 4 is perhaps the crown jewel of your thesis, as you do what few people have done before, and that is doing a holistic life cycle assessment of biojet fuels, where most other studies so far only have focused on carbon footprints, which is perfectly logical. The ultimate answer is obviously, or the ultimate question is, does it make sense also from a holistic environmental perspective? And I think your work here sheds a lot of new light on a topic which was much needed. So compliments for that. Nevertheless, as you can imagine, I have a few questions for you. The first one will be about question figure 4.2 and the use of crops, and especially the sugarcane-based routes. Obviously, we can see that the upstream part has a substantial contribution to the overall, let's say, impact for terrestrial acidification, eutrophication, human toxicity, and other impact categories. But you have taken average crop yields and average impacts, whereas we know that the actual impacts may vary dramatically depending on yields and depending on specific local conditions. These can really be significant variations. So my question would be, are the average results which you show in figure 4.2, are they really strong enough to be able to choose winners, or would the variation be so big in terms of feedstock variability that it would all really boil down to the specific location where the crop would be produced?
Jorge, the opponent, thank you for this question. No, it's not possible in this figure to choose the winners. I completely agree with you. When you're thinking about different environmental categories, for example, human toxicity from pesticides, and I see this in the text, it should be interesting considering the environment, the local conditions. The impacts could be very different. In this figure and in this chapter, I just want to provide a broad view of the other environmental impacts, because, as you know, the CORSIA nowadays there are just two sustainable criteria for CORSIA: climate change and land use change. And there are different methodologies to evaluate the sustainability from RSP or ISSCC. But in this way, I just want to point out when you could expect, according to my assumption, and I agree with you, that's a general assumption, according to my assumption, what's the stage that you have to pay attention. Yeah, this is the first point. The second point, here is, as you mentioned, just to confirm, here I try to bring to my thesis and to describe the pathways, consider the average conditions of production. Sugarcane from the major producer in Brazil, soybean in the common condition, and palm oil that I mentioned in the last chapter in the common condition. But I didn't consider in these other categories the environmental conditions. It's one of the ideas for the future works, and I agree with your point. The idea here is just to point out when you could expect, using this default assumption, what's the most impacted stage, the major contributors, I mean.
Okay, then I think we're very much on the same page here, and I think it would be interesting to do more spatially explicit assessments combining your work and then more, let's say, land use related impacts on a spatially explicit manner. Then I would like to move on, and I read to a little bit to my surprise on page 237 that switching hydrogen production from common steam methane reforming and really without CO2 capturing to electrolysis would actually increase the carbon footprint of basically all routes to quite some extent, up to, I think, 35% or 8 to 13%. That intrigued me because typically the electricity mix in Brazil is already pretty much as green as it gets. And you're saying, well, but it's not green enough. I dug into the supplementary material which you kindly provided, and I would like first of all to point your attention to table SM24 on page 229, where you show that with an input of 11 point something kilograms of water, you are producing a total of 1 kilogram of hydrogen and 4 kilograms of oxygen. So I would first of all like to know where the other 6 kilograms of mass disappear to.
Thank you for this question. I observed this mistake after the thesis printed. I have a colleague that observed it. Then this balance is not correct. But in this production that you get from a Brazilian company that's produced hydrogen from water electrolysis, the point here, because I didn't consider any environmental burden for water, but the point here is the amount of the power that is necessary. I'm not remember here now the level of the purity of the hydrogen. If you need a very pure hydrogen, you have to it's much more expensive, and you have to spend more power here. But the environmental burden of the hydrogen from water electrolysis, even produced in Brazil, it's also intrigued me, considering the renewable energy that supply the Brazilian power grid. And here I'm considering the Brazilian power grid. Even though the results using the hydrogen from water electrolysis, it decrease. It's not so good. It didn't provide better results than we were expected. I suppose that as it's happened in the other parts of the world, the green hydrogen completely produced from solar and wind. 70% of the energy, Brazilian energy, are from renewable sources, as you mentioned previously. But in these, the 7%, you have a big contribution from the hydropower plants, and I don't have the
let me interrupt you, because I wasn't going to get there. On the next page, on 230, you do provide the overall, let's say, contributions of different inputs to the electricity mix. And you're right, 84% would be renewable. I'm going even higher and say 90% of the fuel mix is renewable or nuclear. And of the remaining 10%, the largest part is natural gas, and only a very small share is from coal. So I'm pretty sure that the carbon footprint of the average carbon footprint of Brazilian electricity is as green as it gets. And as such, I strongly doubt that compared to direct steam methane reforming, where you have massive emissions of CO2 directly by producing hydrogen, that would result in a worse performance just because of the losses in electrolysis. You would have to need a very, very, very pure hydrogen assumption to get those massive losses. And let's say for the aims which you're looking here at, which is basically hydrogenating fatty acids, you don't need that level of purity. So could you comment upon whether you do really still believe that this will add to the greenhouse gas footprint compared to steam methane reforming rather than reduce it?
Well, as I mentioned previously, this result from a Brazilian company. Then I don't remember what's the level of the purity of the hydrogen. Then I suppose that because of it, it was the environmental performance of this hydrogen that I consider here.
Okay, I would strongly then just recommend you to look into this and other studies and see how this compares to other studies. Okay. But moving on, this was a fairly nitty-gritty detail. I think overall your results are very valuable, and I would like to go back to the bigger picture. So you chose as a methodological approach attributional LCA for chapter for the third paper, basically chapter 4, which is in a way understandable, but I think also surprising. After all, attributional LCA is mainly aimed to compare different existing products, whereas biojet fuel is still a almost non-existent sector, which we describe on paper. And as such, a consequential approach, which you also applied in other chapters, would have been interesting. So if we would stick to a attributional sector, that would perhaps mean that we have the same production of crops, but then switch from road to aviation and switch to electricity. And on the other hand, if you would have taken a consequential approach, my question to you would be, can you speculate on what additional environmental impacts you may have found?
Well, the first part of your question, if I understood you well, I don't agree that the attribution analysis can be used just for status quo. Attribution analysis, sorry, just return. I'm not sure, I don't agree that attribution analysis must be used or should be used just for a current process. I think it's possible because I understood attribution analysis as a photography. Then you can use it to take a photo in the assuming a status quo process that there isn't, but in the future. I think it's possible to make this. The second question, it was about the consequential analysis, but Professor, sorry, I didn't understand the question. Could you?
So you obviously did not perform a consequential approach in this chapter, but you did in others. Could you speculate how the results of consequential full LCA might have looked like based on the earlier work that you've done? Where would you expect the biggest changes compared to the attributional assessment?
Well, I didn't consider the indirect effects from the land use change that you can expect. It's very important in a consequential analysis. In a consequential analysis, the marginal displacement of the power, then the marginal power in Brazil is, and I discussed it in the second chapter, is from the natural gas production. Then the routes, the pathways, when you have the power surplus, you can expect different impacts in it. And in this case, in this chapter 4, when the residues are in use, I try to explore this idea when the residues is a product in the market, when I consider the different boundaries to assess the waste-based pathways, the residues-based pathways. In a consequential approach, I suppose that to make a comparison, to make a parallel with the attribution analysis, we have to consider when the residues are free and when the residues are used, and the consequences that you can expect when the residues are in use. In the chapter 2, I discussed it, but of course, just considering the climate change.
Okay, I'm looking a little bit at the chair, how much time I still have.
Well, I'm afraid your time is over. But if you have a very urgent, brief question...
I hope that my remaining questions will be able to discuss in real life over a nice caipirinha or beer in the future, and I hand the floor back to the rector.
Thank you very much, Professor Jung here. Professor Veri, the floor is yours.
Waardepromovendus, I've been reading your beautiful and well-written thesis with a lot of interest, and I would like to congratulate you for a really nice piece of work. Now I would like to have a small discussion with you, and I would like to continue in the line of the previous opponent. I would like to discuss a little bit the different methods of life cycle analysis. And I refer to page 67. The first question is an easy one, I think, is when talking about attributional life cycle analysis, you mentioned that residual feedstocks were deemed waste for second generation pathways in the reference case, correct? My question then is, does this imply that when the demand rises and we start growing raw material just for alternative jet fuel production, and we have to take the upstream effects into account, does it mean that we in this case have to switch to consequential life cycle analysis?
Wholly the opponent, I'm get the page here, sorry. If I understood your question, Professor?
My question is a little bit, what I want to get to is, when do we want to use attributional life cycle analysis, and when do we have to switch to consequential life cycle analysis?
I got it. I got your question. Thank you for clarifying. It depends on the question that you want to answer. That's the answer. Yeah. If you want to compare, as the previous professor mentioned, if you want to compare products, just focus on the in and out flows and what's the performance of this process, independent of the environmental, not completely independent, but just focus on the process. Attributional analysis could fit better. If you want to understand what's the consequences from a decision based on a specific situation, if the residues are in use, if the residues are available, this is the consequential analysis. Then it depends, Professor, what's the question that you want. I'd like to add that in the attribution analysis is easier, yeah, than the consequential ones, because our focus just in the in and outputs, and the consequential analysis, a good consequential analysis, it depends on the market situation. Yeah, you have to describe more the context that there's when these pathways exist.
The question I then have is the following. Ultimately, we will have to make a choice. Which route are we going? Ultimately, we also will have to compare biofuels to other routes where we use e-fuels, for instance. But let's say we want to perform a life cycle analysis, then, yeah, like you say, it's depends on the question you have. But my question is, what is going to be the best regarding energy needed, land use needed, and then do I have to choose attributional, consequential, or can I choose whatever is most perfect, which suits me best? So when I want to know the minimum impact, what should I choose? Or should we think of something completely new? What would be your suggestion if it was up to you to come up with something? What would you do?
Well, if I a producer or if I a policymaker, I would choose the attribution analysis for the users, for the customers. It's easy. You just need the accounting of the input and output flows, and that's it. You have the methodology. Of course, it's disputable, the allocation, it's easier. Then I would choose the attribution analysis. But I suppose that the consequential analysis could provide a general overview of the choices. Then I would suggest, I don't know, in 5 years, or to build some scenarios depending on the choices, on the performance of the pathways. I would suggest the consequential analysis for a researcher that support the policymaker. Yeah, that's the idea. The attribution analysis is more day by day. It's a routine. It's easy. Yeah. Then I suggested it. In terms of the policymaker and thinking about to have a broad view, what's the possible scenarios of the policy? What's the possible or how the policy is going? I would suggest the consequential analysis, because it's not so easy to carry out a consequential analysis as the attributional one.
Yeah, but ultimately, if I would be a policymaker and I want to know what is the overall impact, it seems to me that the attributional is not sufficient, because I forget very important topics. I'm very much interested in land use change, for instance. And
Yes.
Yeah, you see what I'm getting at. It's right now. If I can choose, well, in this case, if I am in favor of a particular route, I could say well, choose attributional because it's best. And then in other cases, it looks like you're better off when you're using consequential. This is my point, and I want to have a fair comparison between all the different routes. But it could be that this is a reason for a longer discussion. I think if I may switch to another area a bit.
Professor
I would
Wery, Professor Wery, I propose we first ask for a reaction of the candidates on this topic, please. Very short reaction. Or do you agree to switch to another topic? Professor Wery just made a comment. Do you want to react on that? The candidate.
I didn't understand, sorry.
Professor Wery just made a comment with regard to your previous statement. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, I understood the comments, but I think that I answered the question.
Okay, then we can switch to the next topic. Professor Wery, please continue.
Okay, thank you very much, meneer Director. If you can take a look at figure 2.5 on page 81, what we are seeing are uncertainty bars or error bars, you could say. First, I would like you to explain to me what an error bar means. Is this a 95% confidence interval?
Professor, could you repeat, please?
If you look at the bars on in this figure 2.5.
Figure A or B? Are they both there?
Both, whatever you want. We have actually what my question is going to be the following. You have a total bar, which is an uncertainty, correct? And this total bar seems to be just the summary, the linear summary of the individual components. Is that correct?
Is that correct?
Okay, then my question is, how should I look at such an uncertainty bar? This is a 95% confidence interval, correct? Or
I didn't carry out in this case I didn't carry out in this case, Professor, uncertainty analysis. Yeah, it's a deterministic analysis, and the large of the bars are from the sensitivity analysis. Yeah, I assume it according to the literature, the range that that you can possible to have according to hydrogen or refining stage or transportation distance. In the chapter 4, I carried out uncertainty analysis considering, the statistic points and issues. Yeah. But this is not uncertainty analysis.
How do you add individual uncertainties to get the overall uncertainty? How do you do that? Just adding? It's
in this case, it's our deterministic results. If I'm understanding you well, I just sum the contribution, the positive, the increasing contribution and decreasing contribution to generate the total bar, and that's it. It's not uncertainty analysis. Then it's just a linear composition. This total bar represents just a linear composition of the other issues. Because I just want to add here, there are two aspects. We have process issues that can be understood independent from each one, and we have methodological issues. Yeah, in the total bar of the process issues, I would say that the hydrogen, water electrolysis, refining stage, transportation distance, and I sum linearly, and I have the total bar.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answer. Meneer Director, in view of the time, I propose I give the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Wery. Then I'd like to invite Dr. Posada Duke.
Thank you, Meneer Director and other promovendus. Sorry for going straight to the question because we have just a few minutes left. From your analysis, it is quite clear that aviation biofuels will bring many environmental benefits. But it's still the production of aviation biofuels have some major economic barriers. So the high production cost, the low cost of emission units, and then we have the dilemma of mitigation and then carbon offsetting cost. So that's something to be defined actually for people in the field. And also knowing that this sector has a very tight margin on economics and that 30% of the operation costs are coming from the consumption of the fuels. And also in view of the current situation of the aviation sector, I wonder then what is the future of sustainable aviation biofuel, and probably if that is going to be just a luxury for the future.
Zeerlief promoter, thank you for your question. I think that you used the correct word. When you talk with the researchers and engineers from airlines, the word that they use is luxury. Unfortunately, the aviation sector, because of the coronavirus, was the most impacted sector. Yeah. Then, but we can see the possibility now to provide this great reset in terms of the energy shifting. Yeah. My expectancies for the use of the sustainable aviation fuels is it would be postponed. Yeah. Because of the features, the aspects from the aviation sector, but I can't see a different way. Yeah, I can't see a different way to decarbonize the aviation sector in the short term, and you can understand the short term in this context of the coronavirus. Yeah, I can see a different way than use the sustainable aviation fuels.
Okay, thank you. So, continuing with that discussion, then for the short term, what is the best option? Shall we go for carbon offsetting costs and then have it from different technologies? Or, then we should continue doing research and trying to promote the development of sustainable aviation biofuels?
I think that's the way. Continuous research, try to decrease the costs. You can see several initiatives in the world, yeah, to produce alternative aviation fuels. Several technologies are in mature level, but my expectancy in a perspective of the airlines is achieve these targets purchasing carbon offsetting, because it's much cheaper than mitigation costs. But you have to continue. And I see this in the thesis, a consolidated supply chain for biofuels that does not appear overnight. Yeah, then you have to scale and produce. That's it.
Okay, and in that view, then what is the role of the technologists and technology developers, to play in this transition?
Well, I think that the continues with the metro technology, yeah. The use of lignocellulosic residues from fast pyrolysis and hydrothermal liquefaction, it's not appear, but it's become more feasible, gain scale, yeah. And I'd like to add here another important point: the production of the hydrogen. There are several opportunities behind of this supply chain. One of them is produce the green diesel. Behind of this is the opportunity to create a consolidated supply chain of the hydrogen, for example. Yeah. Then it's not only sustainable aviation fuels. There are big opportunities to develop then other fuels, green fuels, considered including hydrogen. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Beadle. Thank you, Dr. Posada Duke. The committee will withdraw for further deliberation in the committee room. The session is adjourned. I reopen the session. Het College voor Promoties van de Technische Universiteit Delft, vertegenwoordigd door de hier aanwezige commissie, heeft naar kennis te hebben genomen van uw proefschrift met stellingen en na uw verdediging daarvan te hebben gehoord met inachtneming van het bepaalde in de Wet op het Hoger Onderwijs wetenschappelijk onderzoek, besloten u de graad te verlenen van doctor. Ik verzoek de promotor, het College voor Promoties als zodanig aangewezen, zich wel van haar opgedragen taak te kwijten.
Uit kracht van de bevoegdheid bij wet toegekend aan het College voor Promoties verklaar ik namens het college, hier vertegenwoordigd door de rector magnificus en de overige leden van de commissie, bij deze u, Rafael Capaz, te bevorderen tot dokter en u alle rechten te verlenen, welke aan de dokterstitel zijn verbonden. Ten bewijze hiervan overhandig ik u het diploma dat u het recht geeft de titel dokter te voeren, ondertekend door de rector magnificus en de promotor en voorzien van het zegel van de Technische Universiteit Delft.
Dear Dr. Capaz, your diploma is a dual diploma, awarded together with the following partners Institute for Higher Education, the University of Campinas in Brazil. And that's stated on your diploma and has been approved by the board for doctorates. Congratulations. Well, it's in fact the promoter's privilege to be the first to congratulate the young doctor. I understand that Dr. Posada is...
Dr. Posada Duke and also
Professor Seabra is giving the laudatio. Please. Your microphone. Your microphone, please. Yes. No.
No.
Still not. We can still not hear you. We cannot hear you. Yeah, go
Sorry
ahead.
for that. Okay, good. Dear Dr. Capaz, dear Rafael, ever since we met, you caused a great impression on me. From the beginning, you were quite energetic, motivated, and enthusiastic. We first met physically back in July 2016 in Campinas, and I remember it was in a classroom and just in the middle of a coffee break for a joint course in between the University of TUDelft and University of Campinas. Since then, we continue our joint project collaborating remotely, and you made some progress in defining the knowledge gap, research questions, and selection of the more relevant case studies. In 2017, you went to the Netherlands, and we started to work on the conceptual processes and modeling for all case studies. It certainly took you more time than initially expected to go through all the models and data already available on the different systems. However, you managed to get a full understanding of the technologies, processes, supply chains, and all the systems considered. Soon after, you corrected some of the models and also adapted them accordingly to your needs. Then you started working on the data inventories for the multiple systems selected, and in doing so, you wanted to be quite rigorous, and you became very ambitious, proactive, and independent by reaching out to multiple Brazilian companies and collaborators working on the different stages along the supply chains considered in your thesis. You were certainly successful in dealing with all the legal conditions and all the confidentiality issues related to the sensitive information. But actually, that is something that we are still dealing with for one of the additional papers. I hope that is going to be sorted out soon. However, your first year stay at the, your 1-year stay at TUDelft went rather fast, and although you made significant progress on the concepts and models, you were still working on the data collection and the background systems. I think this is the right time to say that during your 1-year stay in Delft, it was quite meaningful, not only for you, but also for our group in general. You brought in a different perspective, an opinion, and even your own style to intervene in the group discussions. You also merged quite well in our diverse group, and you managed to build your own expertise and academic strength in our multidisciplinary group. But then it was time for you to go back to Campinas. You continue quite committed and motivated to deliver the best quality possible of your work. And then at the end, you managed to complete, in my opinion, the most comprehensive and rigorous study on technologies, processes, supply chains, economics, and environmental impact assessment for aviation biofuel production that has been published so far in literature. So congratulations for that. In addition to the academic value of your work in terms of the discussions of the different methodological choices for environmental impact analysis assessment and or on the empirical value of the case studies that use real-life production data provided by the companies, your thesis have an additional major contribution to the field and to the discussions on aviation biofuel production. And it is on the carbon offsetting and mitigation measures and on the emissions accountability for different regulatory schemes. Rafael, your work is a clear example on how our group, biotechnology and society, can combine on a systematic and consistent way multiple disciplines to put in context the technological developments to then understand the best possible ways to use them at a large scale and to also understand their possible consequences on the environment and on society at large. Rafael, I have really enjoyed working with you. It was a great experience for me, and I must say I have also learned quite a lot from you, not only for your professional qualifications, but also from your personal qualities. You are currently working as an assistant professor at the Federal University of Itajua, and I'm sure that you will continue doing an excellent work as an academic and also as a professor. And here I just want to say that you are one of the persons I know who has the highest teaching skills and passion for teaching indeed. With this, I just want to congratulate you, your family, your wife for this achievement and for the excellent work that you have done and for showing once again that the collaborative work within the dual degree program is set for high quality. All the best, Dr. Rafael Silva Capaz.
Thank you. Dr. Seabra. Professor Seabra.
Okay, thank you. So before addressing Rafael, first I would like to express my gratitude to the esteemed members of the Evaluation Committee for the valuable contributions and comments about the work. It was indeed a pleasure to have the chance to somehow interact with you today. I would also like to take this opportunity to thankfully acknowledge Patricia, John, and all the staff in Delft to make this partnership possible. I really hope we can continue this fruitful partnership in the future. And now let's go to Rafael. Well, Rafael, I must say I'm extremely happy to be here today taking part of one of those probably will be the most remarkable moments of your professional career and personal life. I first met Rafael in Itajubá for the defense of his master's degree more than 10 years ago. A few years later, Rafael came to me to talk about the possibility of pursuing a doctorate degree at UNICAMP. And of course, it was with great joy that I started this long journey with him. From the very beginning, Rafael proved to be a genuinely nice guy with outstanding interpersonal and professional skills. As people in Delft probably noticed, Rafael is a very pleasant person, easy to deal with, and who is beloved by his colleagues. It was also very clear to me from the very beginning he was an enthusiastic and engaged student with excellent teamwork skills who bears an innate curiosity of the research. But more importantly, I must stress his courage. An example of this was his decision to engage in the dual degree process after having already completed some of the PhD time at UNICAMP. We talked a lot about the challenges that would exist, but by no means this was an obstacle for Rafael to move forward in this project. And after a few years of hard work, commitment, some excellent and unfortunately not so good experiences in his personal life, as well as a stubborn pandemic, we are here today to officially recognize Rafael's contribution. I'm positive that the Brazilian and why not the global academic community will benefit greatly from this additional member who will perform his activity with brilliance at UNIFEI. In summary, my dear friend Rafael, congratulations, really well done. You definitely deserve it. And I wish you all the success in the future. After all, this is just the beginning. Thank you all.
Learned Dr. Capaz, you now have the right to use the title of doctor. And your doctor means that society can rely on your judgment, that you will act transparently and communicate independently about your results and the societal relevance of your work. In other words, your doctorate implies that you will uphold scientific integrity. And I wish you a great deal of wisdom and prosperity with your new degree. And on behalf of the Board for Doctorates of Delft University of Technology, I congratulate you and your family on earning your doctoral degree. Dr. Capaz, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your presence here during the live stream, and I hereby close this academic session. Well, Dr. Capaz, well done. As we all hear, you had a nice event. We all enjoyed it to hear about your opinions and your comments on all the questions. You did very well indeed. We asked all the members of the committee to write something in your thesis. Congratulations and a little bit more. So hope somewhere in the near future you will receive not only your diploma, but also your own booklet with some nice wording in it from the committee. Enjoy your new status, your doctorate degree, and it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Professor Olsenreijer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rafael. It was great to see you here and, well, to be so confident of your performance and also in the work that you have done. I know that you have enjoyed the Netherlands. I've never seen a PhD student going to travel so much in Europe as you. I mean, he was off almost every weekend to another place and seen quite a lot of Europe. And that may be a good sort of trigger to future dual degree students to come and see and do the same. Rafael, I'm trust that you'll get a fantastic career, and I would like you to stay in contact in the future, and so that we can continue our caipirinhas at some point. I do have a little present, and of course you now get the BTS teddy bear. So in case of doubt, then you can always cuddle this. And, well, another tradition is the Rafael. So we've got a contribution from everybody in the group in this booklet. And you can see here that Rafael indeed has also seen the flowers in the Netherlands. And now I must say that You are the second one today, huh? So BTS has a great day in dual degrees. Andrea also got her doctor's title today just before you. I also have an Andrea here, and I forgot to show it to her. So everybody in the live stream, including Andrea. Andrea, this is also coming to you and as a contribution, and I congratulate you both. Ah, you are there, great. 2 new fresh doctors in Campinas, fantastic. And I wish you a fantastic celebration after this, and good luck both.
Professor Zebra, you also had the floor, but maybe you would like to add something.
Well, I think I've said enough for today. So
That's fine, that's fine.
It's for me. It's open to me.
Thank you very much. Yes,
Just
that's fine.
to congratulations again, Rafael. Like I said, really well done. Let's stay in touch. Hopefully the pandemic will allow us to interact more. So hope to see you again in the near future. Congratulations to you and your family.
Thank you. The same for Dr. Posada Duke.
Thank you. And yeah, I have also said most of the things that I wanted. But you know, Rafael, it was great working with you. The whole process, seeing all of your professional growth, and also sharing time with you, it was pretty good. So yeah, congratulations, well deserved, and please enjoy the new title and yeah, your new status.
Thank you. Professor Da Silva Walter.
Congratulations, Rafael, for the achievement. And I would like also to say thank you to Patricia, Joaquin, and John for this opportunity.
Thank you. Professor Cavalet.
Yeah. So congratulations, Rafael. I know it's a big day for you. I'm very happy for you. You have done a very great contribution for the society and for the scientific community. So you have made something that very few could do. So you should be very proud of you. We know that the PhD can be long, and it has some bumps, and it's about a marathon. You have to run for a long time, but your day finally arrived. You just crossed the line, and you made it very well. So congratulations. And yeah, I would also thank Joaquin, Patricia, and John for the invitation for the committee. I'm very happy to read this work, and it's outstanding. So congratulations to you all.
Thank you. Professor Junginger.
Dear Rafael, dear Dr. Capaz, yeah, it's always a pity that we do not have the opportunity to actually say cheers in person, but I would like to congratulate you and your family and friends very much on your defense and on your thesis. I read that unfortunately you started this marathon with 4 grandparents and only 1 is left, but I'm sure they will all look down from you from heaven and be very proud of you, and the one who still made it. Again, my sincere, well, congratulations to finishing this fantastic piece of work. I also like to travel, and I haven't been in Brazil for far too long, so I hope that one day, either in Brazil or in Utrecht or Delft, we can see each other in person, continue our discussions, hopefully flying over the globe with sustainable biojet fuel. And I wish you all the best for the future and enjoy this fantastic day.
And Professor Weerij.
Yes, dear Dr. Capaz, also from me, congratulations for really a wonderful piece of work. I must say it was really a pleasure taking part in this committee, and also reading your thesis was really wonderful. It has taught me quite a few things, all the delicate details when comparing the different routes to sustainable aviation. And in this sense, I can tell you I will take this along. I'm constantly on a quest to make aviation truly sustainable, and your work will play an important part in that for sure. And I really would like to thank you. Again, congratulations to you, to your family, to your wife. Enjoy your new degree, and It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Dr. Capaz, may I give you the floor for the final words?
Yes, I have a very brief speech here. Dear committee and friends, first of all, I'd like to thank my promoters, Professor Patricia and Professor Joaquim, and my co-promoter, Dr. John Posada, for all the technical support and personal advice for the attention, interest, and patience, mainly patience. Patricia, these low countries left high remarks in my life, in my choices, in my memories. Sorry, sometimes the Latin blood appears. Yeah? As one of the leaders of this dual degree program, I'm not quite sure that you can measure the impact of this great opportunity on our future research life. If you can, please, let me tell you that the benefits are still higher. Joaquim, since you are part of the committee of my master degree, I followed your research papers and technical reports, which always have been published with unique technical care and intriguing discussions. Sharing a similar opinion of your other students, I can tell you that I feel privileged to be supervised by you during these long years. John, by a frequent contact since 2017, as a conscious supervisor, you have led substantial changes in my research life. What's the novelty? What's the question addressed? These kinds of questions during my PhD challenge me to put my efforts and my time into an effective contribution to society and human life. The daily contact with the Brazilian group, Jorge, Dani, Marjorie, Simone, Elisa, Marcelo, Rosana, and Cecilia, and the Dutch group, Faranas, Philip, Zoe, Mar, Zizian, Casper, Lot, Arjun, and the new colleagues, also supported me during these years, motivated me with intriguing academic discussions and funny moments, becoming these hard times a bit more soft. I register here my sincere acknowledgements for all of them. Likewise, for the backstage staff, Anka, Bruno, and Johnny, thanks a lot for all your support, attention, and professionalism. I'd like to add here my sincere acknowledgements to all the committee members. It's very nice. It's a big, great pleasure to me divide discussions with the authors that I used to cite in my thesis. Yeah. I also thank you, my friends in Brazil, including those from the Federal University of Itajubá and the Netherlands for all their support. My amazing group of dual degree, almost brothers, adventures in the same seas. Tiago, Bianca, Meissa, Lucas, Elisa, Ana, André, Eduardo, Carla, Wesley, Felipe, Walter. Thanks a lot. Sharing our experiences, expectancies, doubts, and fears provided me a continuous motivation to accomplish this dual degree. And thank my